You know what's scarier than walking alone in a dark hospital at night? Seeing a surgeon quietly reading the surgery schedule in a wing that's been closed for hours and finding out he died years ago. Hi guys, I'm Ryan. I love spooky, creepy, mysterious stories, even though I'm also the kind of person who gets scared just by turning off the lights. So I thought, if I'm gonna suffer, might as well bring you along with me. I scour Reddit and other dark corners of the internet to find the most bone-chilling stories I can. Feel free to watch this while eating, before bed, or just leave it playing in the background while you work. Alright, enough rambling. Let's get started.
What the hell is even that?
In today's video, we're diving into stories shared by people who work around death. Security guards, morgue staff, funeral home employees, people who see things most of us never will. And sometimes what they see can't be explained. The midnight surgeon who never clocked out. I used to be a security guard at a hospital. One night, while doing my rounds, I went into the surgery wing and was walking down a hallway when I saw a doctor looking at the whiteboard where all the scheduled surgeries are written down.
Are you sure about that?
I said, "Hello, doctor," and kept going. The doctor didn't say anything back, just kept studying the whiteboard. When I got back to the security office, I was telling one of the guys that's been there for years about how I greeted this doctor and he didn't say anything back. I asked if that's the asshole they told me to watch out for. I was asked where I saw him and I said the surgery ward, and he gave me a smirk. He then explained that the surgery ward closes at 9 p.m. and that all patients are moved into the monitoring wards. There should be no one there. He then asked me if this doctor was studying the schedule board. I said yes, and he then told me that I just met Dr. Luisiti. Apparently, many years ago, one of the surgeons went up to the helipad and jumped off the building. Seems like he never stopped working though. Can you imagine a coworker who literally never punches out? Scientifically, our brains under low light and long shifts sometimes play tricks on us, so maybe it was a shift-deprived hallucination. But honestly, if Dr. Luisiti loves his job that much, he deserves overtime pay, even if it's from beyond the grave. The silent archivist in the freezer lanes. I have several stories from when I worked as a mortuary transport tech. The job was basically transporting the deceased from where they were to where they needed to go. Turns out dead people can have a lot of appointments. One time, though, I had an experience I've never forgotten. I was dropping someone off at the science donation place. This is when you donate your body to science and they take it from there. So I wheeled in the deceased, unlocked the freezer, and did all my stuff I had to do in there. I placed him on the board, got the lift out, and placed him on the shelf. The interesting thing about the freezer was that most everything, once it's processed, was wrapped in this blue tape type thing. And you could definitely tell what was inside. Legs, hands, feet, etc. Kind of interesting to me at the time. Anyway, I shut the freezer and locked it back up, and started wheeling the gurney back over to the garage door. The science drop-off and processing area was a big L shape with the freezer off to the larger long portion, and then you turn the corner and there's desks and filing cabinets and whatnot. I about had a heart attack as I turned the corner, and there is just this guy standing there examining files in the file cabinet. Looked just like you or me, dressed modernly, but out of place for what people normally wear back there. I stopped and said that he'd have to forgive me, but he almost gave me a heart attack. It didn't look like he heard me at all or even knew I was there. I should mention this was also about 1 a.m., and I'd never seen anyone at the place this late. So I said, "Well, sorry if I startled you or anything," and went on about my finishing up stuff. Got the gurney back in the van, closed and locked the large garage door from the inside. All the while this guy is just standing there, staring at an open file in front of him, not paying any attention to me. I had to use the bathroom, so I told him that's where I'd be going and I'd be right back. Again, no response. I thought maybe he's deaf and couldn't hear me. So I went to the bathroom and came back to the garage, and the guy is gone, but the file cabinet is still open. I didn't know where he went, and I hadn't heard anyone walk down the hallway past the bathroom. I checked and made sure everything I was responsible for was still locked, and it was. So I just announced that I was going to be leaving and locking up to set the alarm. No response. And that's what I did and left. I'm not sure who he was, or is, or what happened, but it was definitely an odd experience and one I still remember perfectly. Another story about a doctor silently reviewing files in the anatomy wing at night. Why are there so many ghost doctors hanging around the morgue? I'm officially creeped out. There's actually a psychological phenomenon called pareidolia. It's when your brain tries to find familiar patterns, like faces or human shapes, in random visuals. Low light, stress, and sleep deprivation crank that effect up big time. Basically, your brain panics and draws in company that isn't there. But if that colleague didn't blink, didn't answer, and disappeared without a trace, maybe he's just pulling an eternal night shift from the other side. Crunch in the ashes. The firefighter's unwanted companion. Not me, but a colleague found a dead person in a dark smoke-filled burned-out building during the mop-up of firefighting operations. As unfortunately happens sometimes, you find them by stepping on them. If they're still intact, you kind of bounce off them. If they're fried, you can often crunch them up pretty bad under your heavy boot. Well, this guy stood right on a badly burned corpse's sternum. Crunch right into the chest cavity. When he tried to pull his foot out, it got stuck on the ribs and the body came up at him. Burned up arms flailing about. Took him a few tries with what looked like a zombie stuck on his leg. He needed quite a bit of counseling. Poor dude. Imagine walking through thick smoke and darkness. Then suddenly, your foot gets caught on a crispy zombie. Horror movies have nothing on this real-life jump scare. When your brain's on high alert, everything feels 10 times more intense. Hope that firefighter's doing better now. He really got hit with a top-tier nightmare moment in real life. John's Phantom Chapel Light. During my apprenticeship, I worked at a funeral home said to be haunted by an old funeral director assistant who had a heart attack in the building and died. All he ever did was mess with the chapel lights, and if you called him out, something like, "John, the family is coming, please don't," they would return to normal. Not really sure if I believe it was really haunted, but saying something always fixed the issue, so I kept doing it my entire time there. Loose wiring can be a real prankster. Sometimes lights just flicker on their own. But honestly, if John wanted to direct traffic one last time, I'd call that performance art from beyond. The ghostly baby swing. Not a funeral home, but I worked at one of the last booth homes for pregnant girls in the early 2000s. Lots of dead babies and some dead moms in the history of that campus. We had any number of creepy things happen, to the point that I brought it up in a staff meeting and the social workers just said, "Oh, must be time to have the building blessed again." But what stuck with me was the baby swing. I came into the living room and found it swinging by itself hours after all the teenagers were in bed. Now, this was an ancient mechanical wind-up swing. You had to turn a crank to start it. There was no electricity involved. There was no way it just started on its own. And there it was, swinging full force. I was completely terrified, but I just said, "If you want to swing, I will be happy to wind up the swing for you." But when you do it on your own, it frightens people. Every night for the rest of the year or so I worked there, I wound that swing up and let it go. I told other staff members, and I believe they did the same. I like to think it was a sweet baby ghost who just wanted attention, and we gave it attention. Later, they closed the program for parenting teens and made the whole place a homeless shelter. Now I am sitting here worrying about my ghost baby. Is it lonely? I hope not. Honestly, I love the idea that it was a little ghost baby just wanting some love and motion. And you, all of you who kept winding it up, might have been the only family it ever had. If the baby's still around, I hope someone new is giving them that tiny moment of care. Sweet dreams, little one. Marilyn's Afterlife playlist at 3 a.m. I used to work as a nursing assistant in assisted living communities. Usually when a resident started to need hospice, they were transferred out to a higher level of care, so I didn't see death for a long time. When I first started, my favorite resident, let's call her Marilyn, would play Scrabble with me. She was completely alert and oriented. Sometimes she likes to sit quietly with an iPod shuffle clipped onto her vest and these huge headphones. She loved music. Slowly, she started to decline. I would help her get ready for bed, and she would get upset when she forgot how to do something. The only thing that calmed her down was playing music off my phone. She liked Frank Sinatra and the Beatles. Her independent ability declined rapidly, and soon she was bedridden. Still loved listening to music. This was during COVID, and her quality of life was diminishing so quickly that we didn't transfer her out. She had an apartment at the facility with all her belongings where she was comfortable. By the end, her dementia had progressed to the point that she couldn't remember how to swallow. Marilyn passed away with me, the head nurse and her family at her bedside in her apartment, Unit 202. I did her post-mortem care afterwards, styled her hair how she liked to wear it, even clipped her little iPod onto her shirt. A few days after she died, a woman in 203, her neighbor, kept wandering into the lobby during night shift, always at 3 a.m. She complained of loud music coming from Unit 202. That apartment was vacant, just full of Marilyn's belongings. She said the music was so loud it was deafening. Whenever the night shift worker went to check, he didn't hear anything. Not really creepy, more sad. I miss Marilyn. Maybe it was just a speaker stuck on shuffle. Technology sure knows how to freak us out at 3 in the morning. Our brains love to find patterns and meaning in random sounds, especially in the dark and silence. So that lonely music from an empty room could just be a trick of the mind. But if Marilyn's ghost really is blasting Sinatra at full volume in the middle of the night, well, no thank you, I have no intention of joining that ghostly party. DJ Greggy G's Eternal Rave in the ICU. I work in a cardiac ICU, we have quite a lot of death around here. That being said, we had one patient that comes to mind. I'll call him Greg G. Fake name. Greg was on the unit for months. He fought very hard to stay alive every day, and to his credit, he was getting better for a good space of time. Greg was fairly old, late 70s or early 80s. The thing is, he, initially, looked very young and acted very hip. He became a meme around the unit and everyone loved him because he was an old white dude who loved rap, Tupac and Biggie, and would throw gang signs sarcastically as a nonverbal cue that he was feeling okay. He had a trach in so he couldn't talk. He also had his family bring mood lights into his room that synced with his music. I kid you not, his room was playing rap in rave mode sometimes. We called him DJ Greggy G. And he loved it. Unfortunately, he took a turn for the worse. His condition deteriorated rapidly and ultimately he died. We were devastated as a unit. His family let us keep his mood lights and to this day we keep them plugged in at the nurse's station. However, one day the mood lights turned off. We were saddened. Nobody could get them working. But then they turned on. We were happy. And then they started flashing super irrationally. Then we heard the patient that was in Greg's old room start screaming. We went in to check on her. She was a confused old lady who would say some pretty wild things. But this one was weird. She said that she was watching the flashing lights in the hall. She could see them from her room to be fair. Then she said that she saw a silhouette of a man cast into the wall from the lights. Then, she started spastically yelling, "Tell Greg to leave. It's not his room anymore. Tell Greg to go." There is no way she knew it was Greg's room. And with her memory being the way it was, there is also no way she would remember even if she did get told. Kinda spooky. Just like with the mysterious music from Marilyn's unit. Sometimes old electronics have a mind of their own. Faulty wiring or dying bulbs can cause unpredictable flashes and sounds. Our brains love to connect the dots, especially when grief and memory are involved, making us see patterns like a dancing silhouette or hear phantom beats. This phenomenon is a mix of pareidolia and our natural urge to find meaning in randomness. But honestly, I like to think DJ Greggy G is throwing one last rave from beyond, making sure the party never stops. Keep those beats alive, my friend. Even if the dance floor is now a little more spectral. Help me. The lone male scream in an all-female home. I worked as a nursing home assistant for a bit prior to grad school. I worked for a private nursing home where I would rotate between 3 different houses. Each house held 6 residents and 2 staff members. When I first started, all the residents were women. One time my coworker and I were in the kitchen prepping lunch for the ladies when we heard a loud voice screaming, "Help me! Help me!" We exchanged a quick glance and immediately scrambled away to check on our respective residents. No one was present on my half of the house, so I went back to the kitchen. My wide-eyed coworker was there waiting for me with a perplexed expression on her face. I asked her if she had heard the voice too, and she responded that yes, she did, but that there was no one present on her side of the house. We simultaneously looked outside and saw every single one of the residents outside enjoying the rose garden. It was in that moment we both realized the voice we heard was distinctly male. I came to find out that prior to my employment, there was a male resident who was a World War II veteran with PTSD that had passed there. He would frequently hallucinate and scream for help prior to his death. Usually, pareidolia is when our brain imagines familiar images or sounds from vague or random stimuli, and it typically happens to one person at a time. But this story is different. 2 people heard a clear male voice yelling at the same time, so it probably is not just pareidolia. It could be an auditory hallucination triggered by stress or the environment, or even a shared psychological experience, when 2 people pick up on the same unusual vibe in the air. Either way, hearing a "help me" scream at 3 a.m. with no one around is enough to make anyone's heart race. Maybe that old World War II vet is still keeping order in the rose garden, or just reminding everyone not to forget watering the plants. The pristine coffin amidst blackened ruins. I'm not in the funeral business, but I was a cop in the 80s. 3 in the morning walking the streets checking business doors to make sure they were locked. A few days before, our only mortuary caught fire and burned. It was basically burned to the ground, but it was still standing. The front door was intact. As I was walking past it, I instinctively checked the door and found it unlocked, so I went in. The entire building was charred black. I could see nothing but black charred wood anywhere. I walked the length of the hall to the sanctuary. What I saw next made me step back a few. In the middle of this charred, blackened room, on a small pedestal, was a white crushed velvet child's coffin. It looked like it would hold a toddler. There wasn't a single drop of soot on the coffin. Not a speck. Nothing. The entire building was totally destroyed, but here sat this pristine coffin. I turned and left. Science can explain many things, from physical phenomena to chemical reactions, but seeing a pristine white child's coffin in the middle of a charred, burned-down building is truly a mystery without a satisfying explanation. It could be due to some special material or an advanced fire-resistant design that we do not fully understand yet. Or maybe it is a kind of preservation by some force that does not want anyone to touch it. Either way, it definitely gives me chills. Pronounced dead, then awake on the embalming table. When my cousin was 18, he was in a bad wreck and him, his girlfriend, and her sister were all pronounced dead at the scene. The police arrived to inform my aunt, his mom, and she asked that he be sent to a specific funeral home. While they were preparing to embalm him, he raised up and asked, "Where the hell am I?" The funeral director said it was the first time he ever had to go home and change pants. I should add that the top of his head was open and his brain was exposed. He was sent to the hospital. The same police officer came to my aunt's to tell her he was not dead but in the hospital. They thought he'd be in a vegetative state. But a few weeks later, he walked out of the hospital. My aunt said it was the worst and best day of her life. Scientific explanations might account for cases of near-death experiences or clinical death, where brain activity temporarily ceases, but then returns. Sometimes this happens due to factors like hypothermia or medical intervention. Still, such occurrences remain rare and puzzling, especially when severe injuries are involved. Maybe he was just checking in to the afterlife, then realized he forgot to clear his browser history, so he turned back and, well, came back to life. Anyway, that's the end of the video. If you've ever had a spooky experience like this, or just want to share something wild, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And hey, if you liked the video, give it a like. It really helps me going. Alright, stay safe out there, have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.